You're good.
Hello, my name is Alex, and I am a student from the United High School in rural Monmouth, Illinois. I'm conducting an interview for Veterans History Project at the Illinois Library of Congress and the Illinois World War II Veterans Classroom Project. Today is March 1st, 2012, and with me today is Mr. Glenn Paulsgrove of Galesburg, Illinois. Welcome, Mr. Paulsgrove. Could you please take a minute to tell us about yourself?
Well, I was born January 27th, 1926, east of Abington, on a farm. And I had the misfortune or fortune to go to 3 different high schools. I started out at Victoria, then to Oneida, then my folks bought a farm down by Gilson, so I ended up at Gilson, graduating in 1943. I was 17 years old. So instead of enlisting in the service, there was a group from our little town that drove back and forth up to Bettendorf, Iowa, to work in an ordnance steel foundry, which was making parts for the war. My job was to run an electric furnace. All we had to do was push buttons. The other things would be on a conveyor belt coming in. And they was making these big gun turrets that sat on top of Army tanks, where the gun and so on would be in a person. And I worked there for, right after, got out of high school probably in May, and worked there till real late in the fall. My dad wanted me to come home and help pick corn, because at that time we didn't have a corn picker. So late in the winter there, I laid off my job and helped pick corn. Because I was still 17, but when my birthday came up, turned 18 in January, I went to Chicago for the exam. And sure enough, I knew I'd probably pass that. But I lucked out because the day that I was getting my physical, they were filling a Marine quota. If you was 18 years old and you were 1A, you automatically was put in the Marines. They filled that quota with the person that stood right in front of me. I was the first one to get my choice that day. And my folks would already kind of talked. They wanted me to go to the Navy, if possible. So I chose Navy. At least I was going to have 3 meals a day and a dry place maybe to stay unless the ship got hit.
Do you want to do a sound test?
Yep. You.
What was your parents' jobs?
My parents were farmers, and of course we milked cows. I had hogs. I was in 4-H and in the FFA high school with our showing livestock. Sometimes we had calves too that we fed out.
Do you have any brothers and sisters?
Yes, I had 5 brothers and sisters, and 2 of them are gone, passed away, and now I got 2 sisters and a brother, 4 of us.
Why did you choose to go into the Navy?
As I said, there was more or less, you're going to have a roof over your head most of the time, unless you got hit. And you're going to have 3 meals a day, and so on. But Marines, you know you're going in there with a gun. And same way with the Army, if you was in the troops that had to go in.
Do you have any stories about when you were a child?
Stories on what now?
When you were a child?
Child? Yeah, always have some. I guess I wasn't even in the 1st grade yet. But my oldest brother, or not oldest, but next brother, just 2 years older than me, was already in school. And my mother was having a little sister was coming along, so I was home alone with a hired girl. I didn't like the hired girl. So I went and hid. And the hired girl would holler my name, I wouldn't answer it, I'd keep hid. Finally, she went over to the school, because the school was just diagonal across the road and up just a little ways, so. And got my brother out of school to look for me. Well, then I made a mistake. I raised up when I heard my brother's voice. That's one little incident.
How did you feel when you received your draft notice?
When I draft notice, well, I had an older brother that was already in the service, and there was two of us at home, and he's older than me. But I guess I never was told this. But my dad and mother had to get him deferred, because he'd turned 18 a couple of years before me, and that's when they were drafting 18-year-olds. So I knew I had to go, and I did get to spend some time out of high school working there before I had to go to service. And I was rated for a couple schools, but at that time, the pressure was on to get you right into the war, because we're going to Philippines, and it didn't take, I was in boot camp 4 weeks, home 1 week on leave, then went to a receiving base in California, and then on to another receiving base at Hawaiian Islands, not Pearl Harbor, but we called it Red Hill there, and that's where I got assigned then to the ship. I did have a little misfortune then, because there was 10 of us Navy fellows that went aboard this ship at the same time. And it was a Coast Guard manned ship. So if you were in the Navy and going on a Coast Guard ship, you weren't going to get any fair treatment or equal treatment. So none of us got promoted during that time. And if there was extra chipping of paint need to be done on the deck, us guys got called for that. And our main job was standing watch, 4 on, 8 off. And there was 4 locations on the ship that you would spend an hour at. Bow, the fantail, the steering the ship, and one on top with the captain or the officer on duty then at that time. That was the 4 locations, and you'd rotate every hour, so you use it all 4 locations. Then if with the 8 off and then 4 back on, you didn't have to do other deck work during that. So standing watch, we weren't going anywhere anyhow, except when it was in general quarters when you had to man your guns. But otherwise, that was just as well as doing something else.
Were any of your friends drafted at the same time as you?
They were from their different, well, back home, they were starting to get some older people in the 30s or so that they were taken in the service too, to fill their quota. I don't know if each county had a quota or what exactly, but when I went in the service, I went in with some older people. It was harder on them too, because on our ship there was a couple of older, I'd say they were probably at the time 35, and they were married. I think they had 1 child even. And boy, you could, when we had general quarters, if an airplane was overhead or something, you'd almost see them digging right into the metal, trying to get cover. They shouldn't have been in the service. But you never know. They had to take certain ones from every county, and these people were from the state of Kansas. may have less to choose from.
What were the early days of your service like?
Early 4 weeks in boot camp. Regular training, a lot of marching. And then one thing you do that I didn't pass, but I didn't stop you, was swimming. I never learned how to swim when I was a kid, like most everybody else does. But you had to jump off this high thing, because it'd be the same thing if you had to jump off your ship. You know, you'd be 40 or 50 feet maybe off the water. So it seemed real high. You could do that, past that. At least Bob came back up. But really knowing how to swim, I didn't. But that didn't stop you. You went right on. You weren't going to wait for another class.
Where did you attend training camp?
At the Great Lakes Naval Station here, in the central part of the country. All of them went there.
What did you think of the training?
Training? Well, brief, but I probably trained you enough to live with other people, be away from home, so on. Of course, a lot of marching, but otherwise, wasn't too much training for. Until you got on the ship, as far as your guns. I was on the ship, I was on a 20 millimeter gun with my quarters.
Did you receive any specialized training?
I was stamped for 2 or 3 schools, but then instead of going to schools, they were shipping you right over because they needed more people over there.
How did you adapt to military life?
I didn't have too much trouble. I don't think being away from home. Probably hadn't been away from home before in my life, but I didn't have. And then you're in there with a lot of other people just like you, 18-year-olds, and you live to learn to get along, and you develop buddies, so on. So service wasn't too bad, especially since I wasn't marching all the time. I wasn't in the Marines, the Glory Boys. I had a bunk at night to sleep on, so on, and hot meals.
Can you share some of your memories from your service with us?
I'll try to think of something right quick here. Oh yeah. One, we did on LST, that's the ship I was on, Landing Ship Tank. That's what LST stands for. And it's a slow 10 or 12 knots, which be about the same in miles per hour, a little bit faster than that, because a knot is a little bit smaller. But once overseas there, I guess when we had some spare time, they had the bow door down, and you go swimming in the salt water, which you're not going to sink there near as much as like a pool. Well, we'd swim, but I'd have to say that we had 2 Mexican boys, or one of them was half Mexican, half Indian, built like a bull. And he said, "You're not going to go home to your mother, you know, and try to hold you under the water?" Well, sure, you get a little panicky. Does he really mean it, or does he not? So on, you know. And his joking was not my style of joking. But that's one instant I always remember, because he held me underwater there quite a while.
Where did you serve? Where did you go?
In the Pacific, Asia, I had, after my boot leave, I went to Camp Shoemaker, north of the San Francisco area in California. And that was just a receiving base. And every day, you'd look at the wall to see if your name was on there, getting assigned. In fact, even then, we got a job in a factory there, even though it was in the Navy. At night, you know you're not gonna get assigned at night. So if your name didn't show up there in the daytime, you could go. So we worked in a factory in San Francisco there for, and I forget now whether we got paid by the day, because it wouldn't know if it's coming back tomorrow or not, really. But somehow we got paid for it. And this probably went on for 2 or 3 weeks at least, maybe longer, before I got assigned to go to, name did show up on the wall, and went to Pearl Harbor. And even made the trip over there on LSD, which I ended up getting on. And that's where you first get seasick. Once you get out there beyond that first few miles of the coastline, and they seem like they give you grease on purpose, I think. You thought they did almost. But I didn't feel too bad about it. If I wouldn't have watched the other guys, I think I wouldn't have got seasick, but anyhow, I did. And we got to Pearl Harbor. We got assigned to Red Hill, which is another receiving place, because you're still not assigned to the ship you're going to be on. And we were in a receiving base there for quite a while, and then they moved us to what I call just like an open garage in a big town. I don't know if you've ever been to one or not, but they're not closed in at the sides. There's a roof over the head, and they're on different floors, but usually they're open, and this one in Pearl Harbor was open, but it was like a car garage, but instead they had bunks. Instead of having cars in there, it was just full of bunks. And we were assigned there for a few weeks there before I got assigned to a ship. And then we got on a ship to head for the Philippines. And of course, another big experience there, crossing the equator. There's always some old salts on the ship that's already been across. So they're assigned to work you over and go through the ceremony and so on. To this day, I was the only one on the ship that wasn't called on. They forgot my name. So I didn't get initiated. I'd want to go back and do it, because they had grease and everything. They put them through the works. Okay, we went, after passing the equator, you're probably not aware of this, but Admiralty Islands was the name of some islands where the convoy was going to meet to go for an invasion of the Philippines. And we met there. And then we got close enough to the Philippines. You could see them, how they bombarded the night before, the big battleships and the cruisers and so on, in order to try to knock off all the Japs and their guns and so on along the coastline. And then our ship, I was on an LSD, I was assigned. And the LSD that I was on was the first one to go in. It was manned by Coast Guard, but they had us 10 sailors on there. And we'd let out what we called ducks. I think there was a picture of one of those on that LSD. But anyhow, they can go on land or water. And you let some of them off, I wouldn't say a quarter of a mile, at least about a quarter of a mile off from the coast. And if they were getting shot at, well, then they would zigzag going in. And then as soon as they go in, well, then and the people went in, well, then the ship would go in to unload the trucks and other stuff we had on the top deck and other places on the ship and unload. And there was a few pings on rifle bullets hitting on the side of the ship. And did have the misfortune to see one guy get shot on the ship right next to us that came in after us. because he was standing up there giving signals to unload or something. And there was still a few Japs up there in the hills that could see and had daytime and had a rifle range. In fact, after we were there a while, we got to get off the ship, and we saw one of their pillboxes and a dead Jap right there. Of course, that would probably happen from the night before when the battle wagons and the bigger ships were bombarding the beach. So that was my first experience with the war invasion. But then we made several trips after we pulled off there. We'd go down to New Guinea and other islands that we'd already taken or so on, and bring supplies back up for the Philippines. So we made 2 or 3 trips like that. And then when we was backing off on one of them, the officer of the day didn't do his job just right, and he wound the anchor cable in one of those big screws that on the back of your ship that makes it go. There's two of them, and they ruined one with the anchor cable. So we, instead of going 10 or 11, 12 knots an hour, we can only go about 5 or 6. So we still then were used to go back to New Guinea and get supplies to bring up there, where other ships went on to Okinawa, Iwo Jima, and I guess you might say we were fortunate, because a lot of them took hits, because that's when the Japs started using their suicide planes and diving right into you. So, yeah, one way you could look at it was fortunate that officer did that. But anyhow, we made several trips back and forth there to the Philippines, bringing supplies. The last time over there then, these B 2-ton bombs, the B-29s, I don't know if you've heard of that type of plane or not. That was a big plane. They were starting to go all the way to Japan from Guam and dropping bombs. And then they ended up going to China to land. And some of the planes would run out of fuel and didn't get there. But they would try to get to the China coast, because the China was already in our hands, or it was friendly. And yeah, we had this load of bombs on there. And you may have thought, if we'd have got a torpedo on us, there probably wouldn't have been a piece of metal that big left. After we unloaded all them bombs there, then we got the orders to head back toward Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Got back there to Hawaii, didn't even pull in, the orders changed, go to San Diego. So we, went to San Diego. Then we started getting our 30-day leaves. We'd been over there. And there was a, what was it, airplane strike or train strike or something on at the wrong time right then. So we used up a lot of our leave time coming and going from your home if you was in the middle part of the country here or east, because I think it was slow trains or something. It was 4 or 5 days that you had to get back to San Diego. So anyhow, got our 30-day leave and then went back to get on the ship again, because by this time they'd repaired everything, so on. And the last day, us 10 Navy guys got taken off. They had their Coast Guard replacements now. So we got off and signed to a base there, and I got put on a destroyer, USS Cassin Young. I don't know if any of you in the summertime or such had a trip to Boston or not, but out east, the Park Service got that destroyer, and that destroyer, you can go through it and go on it. And it's right on I've been out there a couple times, and it's been there. right across from the USS Constitution, which is a little old, one of the first little old ships. And that was where the Castle Young is. By that time, after going off it, well, they started, the war was getting over now. And shortly after that, LSD took off again. And they wanted you to go back home to get discharged to the station, but me and my buddies said we had a job out there in California, so we got out there. You got a lot more pay if you got off out there. Everyone's going to hitchhike home or so. So we could save a few bucks in our pocket. And in fact, I went up to, with my buddy from Wyoming, Illinois, where he was from, over there north of Peoria. And he had a sister that lived in San Francisco. So we went from San Diego up there. And then I found out I wasn't supposed to be there, or shouldn't be. She was close to having a baby or so on, and had extra work anyhow. She didn't need me there for extra meals and so on. So I took a bus. Instead of hitchhiking then, I did take a bus and headed home. And I did have a brother that was in Denver at Lowry Field in the Air Force. And of course, I had my ruptured duck on, which is our mustering out deal from the service. I was a big shot then, and all of his buddies were standing watch. And they had to before they get dismissed to go on leave. And I just kind of laughed at them. And, but I did stop there, visited my brother a couple of days, and went on home.
Tell us about some of your friends you made in the service.
Some of my friends. I think I've already told you a little bit. This one from Jim Ram. We did play basketball a little bit on a LST. Again, if the tank deck was empty, nothing down there, they would have a little bit of a basketball game. I don't know what kind of thing they put up, whether it was out of a basket or what, something anyhow. And we did a lot of hitchhiking and a lot of going on leave. You know, some of them had girlfriends out there, different things. But you usually learn not to give anybody any money, because there's always some that loses everything. The very first day gambling, the very first night, they lost all their poker games. And but you had to learn the hard way. I learned the hard way on my buddy. He was having, his girlfriend was coming out from Boise, Idaho to, this was a kid from Wyoming, Illinois. No, I got it confused, that's another guy. Anyhow, he didn't have any money, and here his girlfriend was coming, and I went back, when I went back to from being home and everything, I took a little money with me, and plus, I think by that time, we started getting paid, but they were slow getting your first check, or seemed like the service was. So, I don't know what I gave him, $30 or $40. I never did get it, because we got separated. He went on his way. That was just a thing that happened.
How did you stay in touch with your friends and family back home?
Well, we had, you had an overseas post office box somehow, and the people back home would write to me or the service people, and they would find us. Maybe it might be a month or two late getting there, but they would find us. So We wrote them, you didn't call, because you couldn't, except when you hit the States. I made a telephone call or two, because I wanted to get a new uniform. I didn't want the GI issue. I wanted tailor-mades. So I had to get money from home to get me a new sailor suit, which I did, and, because I had a girlfriend, and I wanted to have tailor-mades. So we didn't use, you didn't have a chance to use a phone too much unless you was on station here in the States. Otherwise, you were letter writing or so.
What did you do for recreation when you were off duty?
You played cards a lot. You tried not to lose your money, but you played cards. And you went on, if there's a place you could go on Liberty, you would go places.
Where were you when the war ended?
War ended out in San Diego. They're helping get this destroyer put back to normal. It had taken a suicide plane up to Okinawa, and the captain had got killed even there. So it had a lot of damage to it, but they put, see, nobody knows that the war was going to be over right when it did. And that's why they went ahead, they fixed that LST up that we had, and they took off thinking they were going to go to Japan, because they knew Japan was going to be the next invasion.
How did you adjust to civilian life after you were done?
What was that again?
How did you adjust to civilian life after you were done in service?
Oh, well, I decided to take advantage of the GI Bill and go to college. I went to this little high school 4 years and went to 3 different high schools, so I didn't have everything I was supposed to have. And I went to Knox College, started, all right? I didn't have geometry. I had to take that for non-credit. And I think maybe there was another course. And after I was at Knox there, 1 semester, I believe, or 2, they opened up the branch there in Galesburg. It was an Army hospital during the war, but they changed it to a branch of the University of Illinois. I wish you'd been there to start with, because that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to the University of Illinois, because I was thinking I was going to be an agriculture teacher or a veterinarian. I'd like to have been, but didn't have the chemistry, didn't have all the math and all that. So I went to the branch to get in 1 semester at Galesburg, and then down to the main campus. And another deal came up after about my sophomore year there was a poster on the bulletin board somewhere to take an exam, and they were hiring so many ag students. And I got a lucky grade on it, and I shouldn't tell you this, but I will. The exam papers that I was given had a lot of the answers written on there. So my job was to check to see if that answer is right. If the answer is right, I put the same answer down on my form, my sheet, so I could go faster, probably than a lot of the others. And I ended up getting a higher grade. And by getting a higher grade, I got selected with the government Soil Conservation Service. And I went out for a summer job on that up at Cambridge, Henry County. And that's what I liked. I thought, well, I wasn't sure about being a teacher. I taught at Rushville, Illinois, but I was never quite sure of myself. Do I want to be a teacher or not? So I had this I was in like Flynn on this other one. So I stuck with that, and my whole career was that. I worked here in Henderson County. I was there for about 10 years before I got on up to the next level in management. Then went to, instead of Carbondale, first it was on south of Carbondale at Anna Jonesboro, and then Carbondale, and then moved up to Sterling Rock Falls, and retired from up there. And government's been good to me.
Did you receive any medals or honors for your time in the war?
In the service? Well, got ribbons and so on, and 2 stars in one of them. I got ribbons for the Philippine, what's the right word? Anyhow, getting rid of the Japs off there anyhow. And then the Asia Pacific Theater, and then the Victory ribbon. So I was wearing three ribbons and two stars. 2 stars was 2 of those trips that we came back with supplies to Philippines. They were worse later than they were earlier, because there's a lot more Jap planes in the area for some reason. At first, we didn't have hardly any trouble at all when was there getting shot at or anything. But later, you'd have the Jap planes. One of them, they'd come in, we're lucky they didn't have suicide right then, planes. Because we had one plane that was right along our fantail. You're just skimming just above the water. And they trying to get you to shoot at them, and you'd have other planes there, you'd be shooting at your own people.
Here, may I borrow those? I want to take some pictures of those. I'm going to take some pictures.
Miss Mason, we can use this to take photos also.
Okay, I got my camera right
Okay.
here. But thanks. Thanks, Cameron.
Can you share with today's young people?
Just wait till the bell. We'll just take a little break because I think there's not another bell after that AP bell, is there? It
Not
just
till the
reads
last
once.
one. And we've only got 9 minutes left anyway, so we'll make it.
Yeah, okay, go ahead and ask your question then.
Can you share with today's young people what our country means to you?
What our country needs,
Means to you.
we need not be sending anything, everything overseas. We need to hold our jobs here, and so that people can always go to work. And hopefully that's going to get straightened out. Everything seems to be getting a little bit better here, according to the newspaper anyhow, and TV.
What does America mean to you? With an M. Mean?
Mean to me?
Yes.
Well, I'm glad I was born and lived in the USA rather than some of those other countries. Because to me, they're just not as fortunate. And sure, you have children being born there to families too. And the problems they have. I feel lucky that my lifetime, I'm on this USA.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have any other thoughts or any questions? Rachel, do you have anything?
You said one brother of yours was in the service?
Then my other brother went in the service after the other one got out. They were in Knox County. I don't know if this is true other places, but if you had two in the family in the service, the third one can get, I don't want to say,
Deferred?
deferred, yeah. And I think that's what happened. Nobody told me. My folks never told me. But my middle brother that's over me had to have got deferred because his birthday was a couple years ahead of mine, 2.5 years.
And he did not serve?
He had to go again after my oldest brother got discharged. Then he had to go to serve a year.
Did he help your dad on the farm?
Did I?
Did he, the son that didn't, your brother that didn't go?
Right. He was the choice farm hand.
Well, and I think that's what
He
they
got to
did.
drive the tractor and all the machinery and all this.
There were quite a few that were, I know, that did not have to go because they needed to be at home helping out on the farm, and that may have been, he was.
I think that was a lot of it, right.
When you said you were taking supplies back and forth, what kind of supplies were you, and you said one time I know that they were bombs, right?
Yeah, the last time it was bombs.
But what other supplies were you taking into the island? Do you remember?
I don't really remember, but I know she made 2 or 3 trips back there. It wasn't big things, I mean, like army equipment or anything, because we did carry that on our lower level. I don't know if it was food supplies or what exactly. Think back on it now, I don't remember.
But the LSTs were designed to carry like tanks and bring them on land, but yours didn't bring any of the war equipment over, or did they initially?
The other branches, no, I don't think so. I think the LSTs go clear up to the beach. And so they carried trucks, gas drums, as well as ducks or tanks. They were made just for island type of war. They made them fast. One place was right up the Illinois River, closer to Chicago, where they made a lot of Seneca,
Oh,
Illinois.
yes. I didn't realize that.
Because we have they have a meeting up there near there every year. See, I belong to a state LST association and a national LST association. There was a lot of them made, and they had to make them fast for the Pacific War, because that was the handiest.